and welcome everybody to a new episode of IG Live with Astrid, your APD. And I have a new and amazing guest today, and I think I have already spoken about him a lot of times this week, John Delony. We're going to be talking about mental health, and this is so important for anyone who is in this planet because everyone has challenges with their lives, challenges with their experiences, mental health, everything. John Delony is a mental health expert. He's got PhDs. He's a counselor in education. He also writes books. He also has worked with relationships, mental health, anxiety, and wellness. And he does a huge amount of things on top of that. So I better introduce him and get him on the show. We're going to talk about your identity. We're going to be talking also about trauma and everything else. Welcome,
What's up?
John.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so excited to talk to you and have a chat with you today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Well, one thing that I was just mentioning was a bit of introduction of yourself, but I really wanted to make the most of our time. I know we don't have too much time, so very briefly, talk to us why you do what you do.
That's a good question. My initial answer is there's a lot of hurting people. Somebody's got to be a part of making this big thing better because it's a mess. The other answer is I got two little kids. I got a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I want to be able to sit in front of them as I'm passing away when I'm old and they're older and be able to say, I left it all out there to try to make your world a little bit better before I left.
That's amazing. I think one of the most important things that we need to start paying attention now is reconnecting with ourselves, reconnecting with our mental health, and how important it is to address little things in our mindset that can make a huge difference in our lives and make us living a little bit of a better life, happier life. I think I want to start off by asking you about anxiety, which is one of the most challenging things that I face with my clients. And I guess it is something that you get asked a lot as well. And I know you've written in your book and in many different articles and in your podcast, you talk about anxiety. How can we reframe anxiety? I love the analogy you use as well with anxiety. So I want you to talk to us a little bit about anxiety and how can we reframe it and change the perspective to how we see it and how to approach it to be happier and not feel like we need to live our lives with anxiety for the rest of our lives.
So two things. One is, this is going to sound counterintuitive, I've got no interest in living a happy life. I think of happiness like cocaine and cotton candy. It is momentary, fleeting feelings that my body gives me that says that was fun, right? It's a brain chemistry reaction. I'm way more interested in living a joyful life. And joy it deals with the ups and it deals with the downs. I can be deeply joyful at a funeral because somebody lived a good life. Was this the right thing? We're surrounded by family. We're all mourning together. I'm not happy about that at all. I'm overjoyed because it's right. I think we get sideways when we start chasing happiness. All anxiety is just an alarm system letting us know that something in our environment, something in our world that we either have been thrown into or that we've created for ourselves or some combination of the two isn't working right. And we get so obsessed with trying to stop the anxiety. The analogy I use is it's just like a smoke alarm in your kitchen. And if you're sitting on your couch and your smoke alarm goes off, the smart thing to do is to check to see if anything's on fire, not to just run over and take the batteries out, right? So I think if you're working with clients, with coaching clients, with personal training clients, with counseling clients, and somebody comes in and says, I'm anxious, usually it will distill down into one of three buckets. Your body has identified that you're alone, you are lonely, and it's sounding the alarms because we can't do life by ourselves. Or it's sounding the alarms because we're not safe. We're in an abusive relationship. We're in a toxic work environment. We're not safe, right? We live in a neighborhood that's not letting us be safe. And then the third one is autonomy. Our body has recognized we don't have a say in what we do tomorrow. We don't have a say in the lives that we're living. We've outsourced that to banks because we took out a bunch of loans, or to cars, or to false images of what beauty is. We've outsourced our lives to other people, other things, other voices, and our bodies will sound the alarm saying, hey, you're not driving your own car. If you listen to the alarm system, that's how you find yourself back in your own driver's seat. If you don't, if you just shut it down, man, or addiction is just trying to duct tape over the alarm system, right? If I'm going to find something to numb out with, then you're going to end up, the alarms will get louder and louder and louder, and then they will sound all over the place.
I totally think that is so important. And I find this is so challenging with so many clients that they start panicking about the scale, or they start panicking about something that went wrong with their nutrition. They binged last night, or they just felt like something was completely out of their plan. And they feel like they start thinking about the future and imagining and catastrophizing everything that is going on and what can happen. And then they are just living a false reality, thinking about the future, something that hasn't happened yet, but they thinking that is going to happen. And this is what is going to happen because I did this. This is going to be the consequences, without knowing what really is going to happen. And maybe it turns out that something is going to go well rather than bad. It is so interesting the way you frame, and also you provide some strategies around how to deal with anxiety. What can you do to do better when it comes to managing anxiety?
I don't usually like to use the words do better as much as I like to have a spirit of curiosity. I'm failing, I'm screwing up, I suck at this. I'd much rather ask myself, hey, what's my body trying to tell me right now? Where am I lonely? Where am I not safe? Where am I feeling exposed and vulnerable? Have I outsourced my next steps to somebody else? Or I outsourced my value and worth to a scale. I outsourced my value to an action that I'm struggling with, like binging or dysmorphia, right? I'd rather ask myself, what's my body trying to tell me? I'm often a terrible judge of my own feelings, right? And so it's super important to have people in your life that you can bounce ideas off of, reflect with, say, hey, I feel like this. My wife said this last night, and here's how I feel. And they'll say, you're an idiot, man. And I need that feedback. That's what community gives us, right? So whether that's a coach, whether that's a trainer, whether that's a group of friends that you meet with once a week, we got to have other people. And I often will go to other folks. I might take some quiet time, might write some things down in a journal, but I'm going to go visit with some friends. And here's the other thing, super important. You got to act your way into healing from anxiety. You cannot think your way out of being anxious, full stop. And you have to go directly into the middle of it. And I've got to act differently. I've got to start eating differently. I've got to start moving my body. I've got to stop doing things that are hurting me, right? I think we've got a bad case, especially here in the States, we've got a bad case of I'll be mentally well if I can just get all the right thoughts in the right order. And I think that's nonsense. I have to start thinking about things and being reflective, but I got to start doing different things, right? I got to start acting differently.
Is this the same anxiety with versus high functioning anxiety? Can we say that is the same, or is there a little difference between these two?
I'm a smart aleck about this kind of high functioning anxiety is not really a thing. It's not a clinical diagnostic. It's just anxiety for people who are doing really well, or they are doing really well by external metrics, meaning you are being crippled by anxiety, but you happen to be a great attorney and you can get the case won. You can go 48 hours, prop yourself up with a bunch of chemicals and drugs, get this thing across the finish line, and the world's going to give you $1 million. The world's going to high five you and say, you get partner now because you're a great attorney. So externally, you're looking great, but inside you are crumbling, right? And that was me. You get to phobias, right? It's just your body saying, hey, there's a snake right there. I'm shutting the system down, right? So whatever your particular anxiety thing is, or it's one that we made up on the internet, like high functioning or low functioning anxiety. We don't need any other things. We just need to know, hey, my body's trying to get my attention. What's it trying to tell me? And we're going to start from there.
Well, in this case, I really want to jump on trauma, because trauma is another big thing that it seems to be unrecognized or underrated or even understood well by people that are struggling with their weight or their behaviors. And it's something deeper inside that they haven't even identified, that comes from their childhood or from something that they experienced in the past that is being reflected in the way they behave or the way they try to self-protect themselves without understanding that there was a deeper cause that they are not even really understanding or identifying, so they cannot address. And they feel like the only way out is overeating or trying to gain weight to feel protected or find something that is going to make them feel good and better. Now, how do we understand what a trauma is and how can we better address or get out of that or heal to feel in much better control?
I'll be following in the footsteps of the great Paul Conti and Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk, authors like that who've written extensively on trauma. But ultimately, trauma is our body's coping mechanisms being swamped, being overrun, right? So our body's normal abilities to handle things within a context, it gets overwhelmed. Right? That's what trauma is. Your body's got overwhelmed. We used to think it was about the actual incident. Professor Van der Kolk has done a great job steering me away from that definition, because we used to think trauma was the car wreck. It was the divorce. It was the neglect I experienced as a child. It was the sexual assault. It was those things. And actually, it's better to look at trauma as your body's response in the present, the physical response, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline and the fight or flight response in the present to something that happened in the past, whether it was one day ago or whether it was 40 years ago. Our brains are really threat detection systems and they're prediction machines, right? And so when you're 6 years old and your uncle abuses you, your uncle mouths off to you, your mom hits you too hard, right? Jarring. Your body will put a little GPS pin in that. And it will try to, for the rest of your life, try to keep you safe from those things. And so that's why we see people who experience abuse as children struggle to reconnect with loved ones when they're adults, right? Or to enter into romantic relationships, because their body has identified you get too close to somebody and they're going to hurt you bad, right? So relationships are evil. When we cross a certain line, I'm going to sound the alarms, right? And you fill in the blank, right? And those behaviors you talked about, overeating, undereating, alcohol, I've stopped asking, why are you drinking? And I've started asking several years ago, what is happening in your body that this is the best mechanism by which you can get through a day? This is the only way you can get through a day today. What happened, man? There's something that is more empathetic, but it helps us get to the root cause here, right? Because nobody who's an alcoholic wants to be an alcoholic. I've never met that person. I just got off a 3-hour radio show, and dude, you can see, man, I just started mainlining candy, and as I was eating this candy, I just grabbed it out of a bowl here in the office. And after about the 4th piece, I thought in my head, what are you doing? I asked my body, what are you trying to protect me from? Oh, I'm tired. And I'm just trying to get some cheap calories and some cheap prop up energy. And then I thought, what is this going to cost me? If I eat too much more candy, I'm going to be a little bit grumpy. I'm not going to sleep very well tonight. And then tomorrow morning, I'm going to be a little short, right? So I'm going to start a whole domino effect. So the more I can begin to ask myself, what is my body trying to protect me from in the present? And I can begin to pull the threads on where these things come from, then I can be about owning what happens next.
I love that. Is there any strategy that you utilize with patients, clients, that require to develop a skill to self-awareness and to ask themselves those questions? Like, for example, are you hungry? Are you lonely? Are you feeling tired? What is really happening that is not necessarily hunger? Because if you're dealing with mindless eating or binge eating, or you're struggling with emotional eating, you're probably acting upon an emotion that it's probably not hunger, but you don't know what it is until you actually try to understand what is happening.
Right.
So is there anything that you particularly use or recommend to work through to develop that self-awareness, that self-regulation, and act upon that?
Initially, I wish I had something cooler and more like Jocko Navy SEAL. I just don't. Here's what I carry with me everywhere. It's like $9. I got it at Walmart or something like that. And I put some cool stickers on it to make me feel tougher, right? Like I got some cool like outdoor stick. Here's the deal. If I have a behavior I'm trying to change, if I have a behavior that I'm curious about, why do you do this? Why do you mainline candy after you come off off a stage? Why, when you have a rough exchange with my son, why do I go directly to the fridge? And that's how I handle it. I go straight to the fridge. And why, when after I go eat a lot out of the fridge, I eat half a thing of ice cream, why do I then go immediately to what a loser? Why are you such a terrible dad? Why are you such a loser? You don't even care about your bike. I'm curious, and so I write it down. The first thing is the first idea is awareness, is catching yourself. Why am I about to text somebody? I'm in a long-term relationship over here. Why am I about to text somebody else? Like, why is my body encouraging me to reach out to somebody else? What's it trying to protect me from? Oh, I'm nervous that we're going to break up, or that our relationship isn't what it should be, or I'm not who I like. I don't like who I am in this relationship. And so I'm going to, right? So it's pausing. In counseling, we call it the gap. If I can get somebody, myself included, to pause between that impulse to go grab something to eat, to make that phone call to somebody you're not with, to grab another drink and another drink. If I can get somebody to pause and just ask, what is my body trying to protect me from? That's usually the key to exhaling, letting the waves of that desire pass, and then staying on the path, right? Staying on my original goal, staying on my original identity, right? I think we have become obsessed with goals, overly obsessed with goals. What is your goal? What's your goal? What's your goal? I'm much more interested in the question nowadays, who are you? Who are you trying to become? Because you'll backfill with actions who you're trying to become. So instead of saying, I want to run 4 marathons this year, I want to lose 30 pounds, I set those goals, but I set them later. I first say, I'm a guy who stewards his body. That's who I am. What is stewardship of my body going to look like? I'm going to have to move on a regular basis. I'm going to have to be conscious of what I eat. I'm going to have to be graceful when I go too far. I'm going to have to not binge when I'm not having enough intentionally, right? When I take fasting too far. So I want to create an identity and then live into that. Let the goals be there. Because I see people all the time, and I know you do this too. They hit some magic number on a scale, and they learn that scary, terrifying reality that you might lose the weight you wanted to lose, but you're still you. You showed up on that same scale, right? Or you got that new girlfriend or boyfriend, you got that new job, and you went with you. That's different. The goals don't heal you, right? They're cool to check off, but they don't heal you. Identities can transform you.
There is a big important thing that I want to ask you and address, and particularly on identity, because I see a lot of people struggling with their weight for years, and they are trying to get better, achieve a better version of themselves, but they struggle to achieve that because of their identity. I think it is like they haven't been able to identify what is their old identity and how they move to their new identity. And this is kind of allowing their self-sabotage to ruin what they are doing, because they don't know what is going to happen when they achieve that. They are probably better off staying in the comfort zone of what they know already, what they've been living, or what they identify with. So when you think about the new goal, you feel like you need to do so many things. You have to practice changing behaviors, do new habits, do these kind of things that are completely different to what you're currently doing. It seems to feel overwhelming, but it also feels like you still haven't identified who you want to become, or you are not showing us that person yet. And that's why you tend to pretty much go back to what you usually do that makes you feel comfortable. What is an identity in the first place? That's something we're talking about. And how can we move from that old story to see that new version of themselves, that person that you want to become, and show up as that?
I love that question. What's an identity? I think an identity is an accumulation of your actions, and it paints a picture of who I am right now, right? And I think we like to declare identities, but we don't like to do the work that lives into them. I'm a guy who stewards his body. Really? Let's follow you around for a week or two and find out, right? That's where I would start with identity. I think the place to start with is listening to self-talk very closely. And again, I write this stuff down. I think we talk to ourselves in a way that we would never let somebody in line at the supermarket talk to the cash register. Astrid, you'd knock their teeth out. You would swing at them without even thinking about it. But we talk to ourselves like that. So poorly all the time. We don't say things like, man, I went 500 or 600 calories. I went 1,800 calories over for dinner last night. That was, wow. All right, man, we're back on. We don't do that. We say things like, you suck. Once again, you screwed this up. You are never going to, because we've identified ourselves as the most negative possible version of ourselves. And we've identified ourselves with these goals, with this number, this glowing number on a 12 by 12 scale in our bathroom floor, right? Now the scale for me, it's a benchmark. It's a marker towards a new identity, right? Or when I miss my macros on the Carbon app, right? It's tempting to beat myself up over it. What a loser. You can't even get that solves nothing. So I'm a guy who stewards his body, and I'm a guy who also, one of my other identities that I lean into is I'm a guy who's kind and hospitable, both to other people and to myself. So I got to own reality. I have to lose 40 pounds. I don't know how this happened. I gained 100 pounds. I'm not a loser. I don't suck. I'm not the worst dad ever, but I have made some choices that are going to put my health in significant risk. I want to be a person so I'm going to own reality. And we have our culture is not set up for owning reality right now. There's either you make up your own truth as you go or this extreme shame. And I think both of those are nonsense, right? I have to look in the mirror, own reality. I wanted to have a good marriage right now, and I haven't been fully in, and my marriage isn't great. I wanted to look like X or Y or Z, and I've put on a bunch of weight. I wanted my career to look differently. Here it is. I got to own reality. And then I got to say, here's who I'm going to become. And I'm going to create a series of actions that are going to live into that new identity. And it's that simple, and it's that hard.
It is hard because when you actually lay out the things that you need to do to change, if you don't know how to make them or break them down in a way that is not overwhelming, you probably face that challenge of not knowing where to start. And sometimes when we face that ambiguity, whether what do I do? How do I even start? Sometimes we just step back and don't do anything.
Right.
So why sometimes we know what to do, but we don't do it?
This is just like we can talk about the enlightenment, right? That if we can just give everybody the right information, that will solve all of our problems. Well, we know how calories work. We know the energy expenditure of a calorie. We know what that is. We know how diet and calorie intake work, how they work together. It's not solving the problem. We know how to live beneath your means, right? And the U.S. owes $31 trillion, right? So it's not an information issue. It's a desire issue. It's a abilities issue. It's a confidence issue. It's a trauma. It's a whole bunch of other issues. That's why over the last few years, quite honestly, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out the stuff. I think it's much easier to own where we are, own reality, and begin practicing moving forward. And these stories from our past will emerge over time if we're curious about them. I think we can really get stuck. I don't know how many times I've burned 3 hours Googling the right workout online when I could have just gone and done some. I could have done 3 different hour-long workouts in the time I spent researching. That's so stupid, man. So I need to stop thinking a lot and just go get it done. I'll also say this. In our current culture, we use data as analgesic for anxiety, as a way to stave off or cure anxiety. So I often hear people say, like, I need to get my continuous glucose monitor and my Whoop strap and my Carbon app and my this. I just need to get some more data. You don't need any more data. You just need to go for a walk. Like, go for a walk. I need to have another cup of coffee. I'm going to go talk to this guy. And I've talked to these 14 people about this business idea, but I talked to this person. Just go do it, right? We use more data and more data. I'm going to read another book and another book. And all that becomes distraction from keeping us from actually just going and doing the stupid thing to begin with. And so we got to, at some point, just go, and we'll get some wisdom along the way.
And that's so true. We are always focused on, I need to get that motivation. I am not motivated, or I don't know how to start.
Who cares about motivation? Motivation's dumb.
Oh yeah.
I never. Just go. Yeah, if you wait to be motivated, man, you're gonna be waiting a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is really important to think about action leads to momentum, and momentum is going to bring back that motivation. Is when you, for example, need to go to the gym, but you have no desire, no motivation whatsoever. But if you should just go and show up to the gym, just allow yourself to be 10 minutes. And if in 10 minutes you don't really find any inspiration, go back home. But at least once you're ready there, you have done the first step, which is the hardest, is to decide to do it. You start doing your warm up, and then you realize, man, this feels really good. Why I just don't keep going? And then you end up having a really amazing workout. It's just doing the first step that really brings the rest.
Just go. And that goes back to, I'm not going to wait for my feelings. I'm not going to wait. Now, feelings are super important, and I think we also dismiss them out of sight. I think they're critically important signals, but they often don't tell us the truth, right? I can feel like the worst dad ever. That's my body trying to get my attention, that I need to plug back into parenting. But in reality, am I the worst dad ever? No, I'm not. I can feel like, man, I've really let myself go this week. I feel like a fat slob. I feel gross. Is that empirically accurate? Actually, no. I'll tell my wife, like, I feel gross. And she's like, you look great, right? So it's empirically false, but my body's trying to send me a signal. So I'm going to ask myself, why do I feel like that? Oh, because I had fast food 4 days in a row. And so I don't know all the macros and the seed oils, and I don't care about all that. What I care about is, I feel gross. I haven't been eating well. I'm going to clean that part up. I'm going to feel good, right? I'm going to create an identity. I'm a guy who stewards his body. That means I'm a guy who, on most days, eats pretty dang healthy. And that means that when I don't beat myself up over it. Or at special dinners, I'm going to get off the rails. Or for me, if I'm at a Mexican food restaurant and we're going to have chips and queso, I'm gonna bathe in queso, and I'm not gonna lose sleep over it, right? And I will earn it back over the next week, or I'll earn it back in the gym, plus using an app that's gonna help me with my calories. I'm gonna be smart about it, but I'm not gonna lose sleep over it, right? And I'm gonna continue acting towards who I want to become, and I'm just gonna do that over and over and over again.
And that comes back to consistency. When you just show up, and even if it's not perfect, because one thing that I always talk to everyone is, you don't need to be perfect to get there, as long as you get back on track, as long as you stay consistent on the track as much as you can. And even if you eat junk food one day, or you don't train one day, you will still be able to achieve your big goal as long as you get back on track the next day, or you follow that 80-20 rule. 80% of your nutrition is mostly nutrient dense, high volume, high protein. And that extra 20%, whatever it is, soul food, something that makes you feel super happy, something that really brings you all this old memory, go for it, have it, enjoy it. But just don't eat it because you have to eat mindlessly, or because you're trying to soothe an emotion, but you actually intentionally decide to eat it because that is worth it. And you're actually in the moment, listening to your body, tasting the food, reflecting on what makes you feel, to actually make the most out of it.
And
so with emotional,
Astrid, that actually, that principle plays out in our relationships. It plays out with our parenting. It plays out at work. It plays out how we handle our money. That idea of just keep showing up, just do the small things consistently over time. And we're a culture obsessed with hacks and shortcut, minimum, time in the gym. Man, we are sacrificing our life at the altar of a spreadsheet. Stop. Let's live our lives, right? And let's do most of the things right most of the time. That's such a much more peaceful way to live, right? It's just a more peaceful way to exist and still accomplish all the great stuff that you want to accomplish, still be the person that you want to be, both in your home, in your community, in your neighborhood, in the gym. All these things are cool. And then if you're like Layne, right, Dr. Norton, and you are in a period of, I'm trying to win the world championship. Well, yeah, you're going to be out of balance for a season. You're going to sacrifice a bunch because you're going to be a maniac about one thing for a season. And then when the season's over, you're going to exhale and return to humanity. I do that when I'm writing a book, or when I've got an live event coming up. You sacrifice stuff for a season, then you get back into the just be consistent, just show up and just show up and just show up. I love that model for life.
Absolutely. I think it's so important to just realize that the more consistent you can be on something, even if life has bumps on the road, you will still have bad days. You will still face some days that you're feeling like you're not really getting anywhere. Or sometimes you just feel like, man, I just don't feel like I want to keep going. It's okay. It is just having that practicing that self-compassion and bringing yourself to understanding that there are going to be days that are going to be bad and some days are going to be good, and you're going to feel that you own $100 million, and you feel really confident.
Right.
So it is just understanding that, or just giving that self-compassion, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Just kind of owning that. Now, I am conscious of your time. I want to ask you one more question, and I let you go. Is that all right?
Of course, of course.
How can we set healthy boundaries? Because this is another thing, especially for people that are struggle to honor their own promises, to stick with their own self-care. How do we set healthy boundaries when it's time to set them in the first place?
Most of us have outsourced our lives to such a degree that we don't even know what we like anymore. We don't even know what we want anymore. We just know we're supposed to have a romantic partner that looks like that. We're supposed to make this much money. We're supposed to drive that and live in a house that looks like that and wear this. Our bodies are supposed to look like that. We don't have a psychology anymore for what do you actually want? And Astro, I've sat with multimillionaires. I've sat with single mom with multiple kids. When I finally get down and say, what do you want with your one tiny little reckless life? Very, very few people can answer that question. And so that's where you start. That's where you start, which is like, what do you want? Like, what do you want this thing to look like? Who do you want to be? And very rarely does that end in a number, in a dollar amount. And if it does, usually you're gonna be back at the drawing board, right? Usually it's a picture of a table with people you love sitting around it. Usually it's a picture of work that matters to you, right? You are contributing in some way. You're helping other people's lives be better than they were. And that could be through a sales job, as an engineer, as a coach, as a personal trainer. It could be any number of things. But usually the answer to that question is outside of ourselves and in service to other people.
So is there any specific strategies to self-rules that you can honor and follow to achieve those goals?
I should have fully answered your question. When you ask yourself, what do you actually want? You follow that up with, what do I need? What do I need in this particular season? And by the way, those needs shift and change. And then you have to take ownership and responsibility of your needs. I need to not travel this year, so I'm going to put up a boundary and tell my mom I'm not coming home for Thanksgiving. And that's going to be uncomfortable, and she's going to have her feelings hurt. And I'm going to be sad because usually Thanksgiving looks like this. But this year, what I want during the holiday season is peace. And what I need is rest. And so I'm going to put up a boundary and say, I'm not traveling this year. Or it may be a season when I want to earn some more money. I have some financial goals. I want to buy a house. I want to have upgrade my car. And so what I need is to make some more money. And so I'm only going to say yes to the following business deals. I'm going to say no to getting drinks every night because I'm going to be working extra hard in this particular season. And I think it's, if you know what you want and you know what your needs are, then you can begin to set your boundaries. Practically speaking, most of us have to practice setting boundaries. And so it's good to set small boundaries and to feel what it feels like when you put a boundary out into the world. It's hard. It can be small, like, hey, I'm not responding to texts after 8 o'clock at night, after 8 p.m. And then you got to turn your phone off. You got to practice it. And then the next morning, you're just going to be one of your moron friends is going to be like, are you serious? Are you 100 years old? You go to bed at 8 o'clock? And you've got to feel that, like, a little bit of, I don't want to be a loser and I want this person to think I'm cool and like, and you got to breathe through that and go, no, what I really need is sleep. And if this person really is truly offended that I went to bed 2 hours before them, they are opting out of my friendship. Like, and that's the choice they're making. And I hate that. I'm going to grieve it. I'm going to be sad, but they're opting out of my friendship because a true friend would say, dude, get all the sleep you need. And I'm still going to make fun of you about it because we're friends, but get all the sleep that you need. And then we will hang out on the weekend or something like that. Right. So I'm going to ask myself, what do I want? What do I need? And I'm going to start practicing smaller boundaries. If you just run out and you're like, I have to have more boundaries, and you run out and tell your boss, I'm not coming in anymore on Saturdays, and you call your mom and be like, I'm never coming home for Christmas, the response to your boundaries is going to be so overwhelming with the guilt and the shame that it's going to be hard to hold them. So I say practice small boundaries along the way. And then when you get to some of the bigger boundaries you need to set in your life, you may need to end an abusive relationship. You may need to look at somebody who you work with and say, you cannot talk to me like that. You may look at a personal training client and say, if you make that joke about my body again, I'm going to fire you as a client. You will not be welcome in this gym. Right? So we're going to get there, but I want to practice setting boundaries so I feel confident when I've got to set some of those bigger ones down.
And it's important to actually honor them, because one thing is, okay, you do a list of things that you will do, you don't stick to them, or you just don't honor them or don't follow them. Oh, well, I did this list of things I need to put together to actually set those boundaries with people, with myself, with my life, but I don't adhere to them anyway.
We teach other people how to treat us. If I say, hey, I don't answer texts after 8 p.m. because I go to bed. I'm a guy who takes care of his body. Part of taking care of your body is getting enough sleep. I don't answer texts after 8 o'clock. And then I answer everybody's texts. What I'm teaching them is I make big declarations, but I don't follow through. I'm always available, right? You can contact me whenever and I'll be available for you. We have to teach people how to treat us, which is don't talk to me disrespectfully. Or you can make jokes about this, but not this. Or my friends know that Delony's a dork and he goes to bed early. So if we're going to hang out, we got to let him know, because he's a goofball, but he'll stay up late for the fight. So we're always going to get together for the fights, right? So you train people how to treat you.
I agree 100%. John, I know that you have to a little bit of time. So I wanted just to let you know that I love this. I appreciate you so much. And I cannot say how great your work is and how important you're bringing a lot of people in a much better place mentally, emotionally, with your content, with your podcast, with your show. Is there any project that is coming up soon? Talk to us about your book, anything.
Yeah, just started yesterday, actually. Just got in a room yesterday and hammered out an outline of what will be the next book. I wrote that little bitty book about anxiety that just has kind of blown up for me. And so now we're going to stop so much focusing on anxiety, if you will, and more on the basic tenets of how do we build a non-anxious life in this chaos. And so that's where we're headed next. I'm looking forward to it. And then I'll be on the road a lot in this fall, all over the States, doing live events. And so that's one of my favorite things to do. I love that. Thank you so much for your hospitality. I'm really grateful for you, and you inspire a lot of people. And so thank you so much for your hospitality. I'm really grateful.
I'm grateful too. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night and the rest of your weekend. And guys, if you are interested in looking or watching this again, it's going to stay on my feed and it's going to be edited and also be on YouTube available. So you can watch all again, and make sure you follow John. His work is amazing. And guys, I hope you guys all enjoy and have a blessed weekend. You, John, have a great weekend too, and I hope to see you soon.
I'm grateful for you. Thank you so much. Take care.